time, I'm going to invite Auntie Jeannie Oto to come up and share with us just a little bit about what she does to give to neighbors, and also what some of her hopes are for us as we consider the future of our church in terms of how we give to neighbors. So, Auntie Jeannie.
Thank you. And I see my daughter there, and I'm going to laugh because somebody saying, oh, when your children know you're going to speak, they come to church. And she didn't know I was going to speak today. Anyway, as Phyllis knows, and I'm going to warn Kaku and those of you who do ask me to speak, please don't ask me to speak too early, because I start thinking, and then I get a thought in mind, and then other thoughts come in, and other thoughts come in. And even last night coming home from Hilo, and here's up to prove my ticket, I was writing it on the airplane, and so by then in my mind, my thoughts are all jumbled. The meaning's going to be the same. And so I did grow up in a community where it was such a small community. We didn't have too many people living there until people came, and our immigrants and everybody else. And so when we thought about neighbor, we would always think about next door. And that is what neighbor meant to us. And now we understand, as even Grace Eleanor brought up, our neighbors not only those who live around us, but those across us, those across the ocean, those who are sitting next to you on the airplane, anywhere across or in proximity. That is your neighbor. And when I thought about neighbor, I think about the word love. And then putting on my teacher's hat last night, I said, okay, what are the 4-letter words? It says love. And putting on my teacher hat again, I thought of the letters of the alphabet. And I found a 4-letter word from A to Z, but I could not find anything for X. And so if anybody knows of one, let me know, and I'll put it on my list. So a neighbor is anything when you think of able, bond, care, feel, give, heal, holy, kind, lead, more, need, pure, sing, true, urge, to be wise, and zest, and every other little word you might be thinking of. And I thought, when I read this morning in the Garden Island, it said that those who live in the rural community are those who attend church. And I think that's really true. And so they say that the church will teach you and encourage you to be neighborly. And so this is what it is to be neighborly, to think of the word of God in the Bible, which is love, and that is a 4-letter word. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. I appreciate that, and appreciate all you do for our church and for the community and for all of our neighbors. Many of you know that I spent about 6 years as a consultant with a firm in Dallas, and what I did almost every week is I would fly to churches and religious nonprofit organizations all over the country, helping them to raise more money and helping them to encourage their people to give more money. And it's interesting to me that when I, during that time, told people what I was doing, or since then, when I, like today, tell people what I used to do, the comment is usually, oh God, that sounds awful. That just sounds like a horrible job. You must hate your job. And then the other comment that would often come was, boy, that must be really tough to do today. And I have a confession to make. I actually loved my job when I used to do that. I still love my job, by the way. But I used to really enjoy traveling around and helping people figure out how to raise more money. And one of the reasons that I found it so enjoyable, and frankly it wasn't that hard, was because what I had come to discover in terms of giving was much, much different than what I knew and heard growing up in the church and what it was like as a young adult. I heard so many messages that I didn't like at all. My least favorite message was, give until it hurts. Now, isn't that encouraging? You know, and as I would listen to people get up in front of church and talk about how it needs to be more painful. Is it painful enough yet? Okay, give more. I used to think, why don't you just be honest and put a great big banner out on the street in front of your church and say, not enough pain in your life? Come here for more. We're open on Sunday morning. But you know, to me, I used to tell people, give until it feels good. In fact, if you're trying to figure out how much you want to give to your church or any other organization for that matter, ask yourself what feels really good to you. And if it doesn't feel good yet, then give more. But the idea is, it should feel really, really good to you. So, I wasn't crazy about the message given till it hurts, and I was able to kind of turn that around. And that really helped, I think, in terms of people wanting to give more, because people wanted to feel good. They actually didn't want more pain in their lives after all. The other thing that often I heard in my younger days was, come on people, we've got to make the budget. We've got to meet our budget. And many churches would put together this outrageously enormous budget that they could hardly in any way figure out without a miracle to reach. And then they would pile guilt on people and twist their arm and say, give more money, come on, we've got to meet our budget. What's going to happen if we don't meet our budget? And I was actually at a church once where the pastor got up and told people, we're going to have to cut staff because we're not going to meet our budget because you're not giving as much as you used to. And I actually went back in the books and looked at those church records. People were giving more that year than they had for years and years, and the pastor was just heaping shame on people. And I also thought, and I kind of helped them with this capital campaign where they raised over $1 million. People were more generous that year than they probably ever had been financially in the life of the church, and that pastor had the nerve to get up there and throw guilt on people because he wanted more money for staff. And I thought, that just didn't feel right to me. And then I thought, okay, what would their banner be out on their street? Not enough guilt? Come here for more. See you on Sunday morning. You want more guilt? We've got lots of it. So to me, I was able to turn that around years ago and say, you know, you should never start with a budget. You should start with a vision. What is God calling you and us as a community of faith to be and do together? What's our role in what God is doing in the world? And then ask people to give to the vision. And then guess what? Create the budget based on what people's commitment is to the vision. And so that's what we've done here, and that's what I've always asked people to do whenever I've consulted or helped other churches. It's really important that you start with the vision and ask people to give because that's what they want to do, it feels good, and they're giving to something that doesn't just have a big dollar sign all over it. I'm trying to think, there's so many other things I used to hate about stewardship and giving money to churches and things growing up. But I would say those are the two top things that just used to really irk me, that I thought, oh, that doesn't have to be our message. We really can give because it feels good and that's what we want to do, and we can give to a vision that we believe in and embrace rather than giving to a budget, because frankly, budgets aren't that attractive, at least not to most of us, right? So, one of the things that I discovered as I traveled around the country for those 6 years is that I constantly learned things from other people. I was supposed to be the expert, the professional that would come and tell people what works and what doesn't work and give them some guidance. But it occurred to me very soon after I started that job that I was learning things from people all the time. And I kept thinking, I hope I can share as much meaningful stuff with the people I'm consulting as I'm learning from them. And one of the things I learned is there are very wealthy people in many churches and some very poor people and a lot of people in between. And we all give together with love. And when we do that, everyone feels really good. And there's a vision that they embrace. Now, I've actually worked with some people that were multi-millionaires, and I remember two gentlemen in particular. I sat down with both of them. They were very good friends, and they were members of a church that they were having a capital campaign with 3 other churches. They wanted to build an interfaith service so one church could use it Friday night. It was actually a Jewish congregation. Another church could use it Saturday evening, another church would use it Sunday morning, and I think another church used it Sunday afternoon or evening. But anyway, these two gentlemen that had more money than they knew what to do with bought into the vision. And I sat down with them and said, this is going to cost something like, I think it was $7 million to do this big building where they lived. It was in a rather expensive part of the country. And I remember sitting down with them and talking about the vision, asking them what was important to them. And then I said, well, you know, in order for us to meet this vision, to make it come true, we're going to need a couple people to give gifts in the area of like $1.25 million. Is that something that both of you might be interested in thinking about? And I was blown away that by the time that conversation was over, each of those gentlemen said, we would absolutely be happy to give $1.25 million. And I just thought, wow, such generosity. There were other people in those 4 churches that barely had enough money to put food on the table for themselves and for their children. And you know, the other thing that I used to just cringe at when people would say, when I was growing up and in my younger years, is you have to tithe. You're not being a faithful follower of Jesus if you're not giving 10% of your income to the church. And I remember tithing as a very young adult and as a kid. But I also remember thinking in church, you know what? Some of the people hearing this message, 10% is probably not enough. They have so much money, it wouldn't change their lifestyle one bit to give 10% of their income. And then there's people who really, it's like if they can't afford to put food on the table for their kids, maybe the church ought to be giving them money. Maybe we should be giving them 10% of all that we get. So to me, I had to think a lot about what it meant for all the different people that I connected with and visited with, and asked how they would like to be a part of either their capital campaign or their church's budget or whatever. But it occurred to me that there were people, not just that were very wealthy, that were so generous, but some of the poorest people I've ever worked with, poorer than I could ever imagine being myself, and they were just as generous. And what I learned from them was it wasn't the size of the check or the amount of money they put in the offering plate or the size of their commitment. What was really important was how much love went in to the giving. So a little while ago, I showed you a couple of things, and I just want you to know that this is the most important one. When you're deciding what you're going to give to your church, if you can give with 100% love, whatever gift you give to your church is just as equal to that $1.25 million gift that both of those gentlemen each gave. This is what we should always remember. This is also important because it helps us kind of do our planning, but this is not what the church is all about. This is what the church is all about. So as you're thinking about what you're going to do next week, of course, keep this in mind, but may this determine what you're going to do, how you're going to pray, and what you're going to do, not just for next year for the church, but with your whole life. I'm imagining a banner out front that says, need more love in your life? Come here for more. Because that really is what we are all about. As a church and followers of Jesus, we're here to help people experience God's love, regardless of how much money they make or what their gifts might be to the church. We want everyone to come here and just say, here's a place where I know that I'm loved, and here's a place where I can be encouraged to love other people. So in closing, I'm going to ask you just to bow your head for a moment as I pray with you the prayer that I've invited all of us to pray each week for the last 3 weeks, and invite you to continue praying this prayer. Let us pray together. Oh God, as we seek to reach out into our community by sharing aloha with everyone in the coming year, Open my heart so that love will freely flow in and flow out. May the commitment I make truly represent the gratitude I have to you for all that Beloa Union Church means to me. Amen.